Jake Morrison drifted through the endless black of space, his helmet reflecting the enormous construction zone ahead. The hollowed asteroid barely resembled rock anymore. It had transformed into something far more dangerous. Shining metal-covered areas where massive engines would attach. Weapon openings decorated the exterior like battle scars waiting to happen. They called it New Terra, and it was nearly complete. Jake's radio suddenly crackled with Dr. Lisa Bennett's voice. She sounded thrilled, which was strange for someone usually so composed. Jake pushed away from his viewing spot and floated toward the main construction area. Thousands of workers in protective suits swarmed the surface like busy insects. Most had no clue what they were actually creating. They believed they were simply mining rocks and assembling space stations. Only a handful knew the real truth. Jake found Lisa standing beside a cannon so enormous he could walk upright through its barrel. Lisa's face beamed behind her helmet's clear panel. "We completed the primary weapon today," she announced. "Do you want to hear about its power?" Jake agreed, though part of him didn't want to know. Lisa's inventions always made him uneasy. "This one gun can wipe out a moon," Lisa declared with pride, "and we've installed 50 of them on New Terra by itself." Jake let out a low whistle. 50 weapons capable of destroying moons. The alien rulers would never see this coming. They assumed humans were feeble, good only for mining work and menial tasks. They had zero idea that humanity had been scheming for 5 decades. "Admiral Campbell needs you in the control room," Lisa mentioned. Jake navigated the complicated hallways inside New Terra. The vessel was massive enough to generate its own weather patterns. Clouds gathered near the ceiling of the main living sections. Rainfall nourished the gardens and forests they'd planted inside. It resembled a miniature world, which was precisely their goal. Admiral Roy Campbell waited in the control room. The elderly commander looked exhausted, but his gaze remained alert. He'd been organizing this operation since before Jake was born. "Jake, we've got trouble," Campbell stated bluntly. "Maya sent word from the Federation Council. Maya Rodriguez worked undercover inside the Galactic Federation. She'd been acting as a basic translator for 2 decades, but she was really one of their top intelligence operatives. She transmitted secret codes buried in her routine reports about human mining activities." "What's the news?" Jake questioned. Campbell displayed a holographic galaxy map with colored zones marking different Empire territories. Red showed the Zephyrian Dominion, blue marked the crystalline hegemony, and black represented the Void Collective. "The Zephyrians are organizing something major," Campbell explained. "Maya caught a transmission from their top brass. They plan to declare all weaker species as Empire property. That includes humans." Jake felt ice run through his veins. Property meant enslavement for every human alive. It meant losing human independence forever. "When will this happen?" Jake pressed. 6 months from now, Campbell answered. "They're waiting for their newest war fleets to finish construction. Then they'll attack every free world simultaneously." Jake studied the holographic display. Billions of humans lived across hundreds of planets throughout space. Most didn't suspect what was approaching. The Federation had promised protection, but Jake understood the Federation was powerless. They'd surrender before fighting the Zephyrians. "Are we prepared?" Jake asked. Campbell smiled genuinely for the first time in ages. "New Terra is operational. Liberty Prime needs 4 more weeks for engine completion. Iron Bastion requires 8 weeks for final weapon setup." Jake acknowledged. 3 planet-sized battleships, each larger than Earth's moon, each carrying enough destructive force to eliminate whole fleets. The aliens had never witnessed anything comparable because nobody had attempted building ships this colossal before. It was thought to be impossible, but humans achieved it regardless. They'd taken the solar system's largest asteroids and carved them hollow. They'd constructed engines powerful enough to propel planets. They'd designed weapons capable of splitting worlds apart. And they'd accomplished everything secretly, appearing weak while preparing for conflict. "There's more information," Campbell added. "Maya transmitted data about alien fleet locations. The Zephyrians have concentrated most ships around their central worlds. The crystalline hegemony has scattered their fleets along trade pathways. The Void Collective keeps their vessels hidden in the darkness between solar systems." Jake examined the positions. "They're not anticipating an assault." "Correct," Campbell confirmed. "They believe we're too feeble to resist. They assume we'll simply surrender like we always have." Jake gazed through the control room's viewports at workers still installing components on New Terra's exterior. Every worker risked their existence building humanity's hidden weapon. They labored in the freezing darkness of space, far from loved ones, because they believed in humanity's dream of independence. "When do we show ourselves?" Jake inquired. Campbell glanced at his timepiece. "In precisely 72 hours, we transmit our declaration to the galaxy. We announce that the era of empires has ended. We offer them an opportunity to surrender without violence. And if they decline?" Campbell's expression hardened. "Then we demonstrate what happens when you threaten humanity. We reveal what we've been constructing in this darkness." Jake understood. After 5 decades of hidden construction, after years of pretending weakness, humanity was finally prepared to display its genuine strength. The alien empires had controlled the galaxy for millennia. They considered themselves unbeatable. They were about to discover their terrible mistake. Outside the control center, New Terra's engines started their final testing sequence. The enormous ship vibrated as energy surged through systems designed to move planetary masses. Soon, incredibly soon, the galaxy would witness what humanity had built in secrecy. Soon, empires would crumble. General Sam Parker stood on New Terra's bridge, observing stars drift past the enormous windows. After 50 years hiding in the outer solar system, they were finally heading toward the inner galaxy. Behind him, his team worked silently at their stations. Everyone understood this day would transform everything. "Sir, we're picking up transmissions from the Federation Council," Captain Tony Mitchell announced from the communications station. "They're asking why human vessels are moving without authorization." Sam grinned. The Federation still believed humans needed authorization to travel. They had zero clue what was coming. "Transmit our routine mining report," Sam instructed. "Tell them we're relocating asteroids to a different site." Tony nodded and started typing. The deception would only function for a few more hours. Soon, the entire galaxy would see what humans had truly been building. On the galaxy's far side, Colonel Beth Williams was preparing Liberty Prime for its own unveiling. The massive vessel had been accelerating for 3 days, and they were almost positioned near the crystalline hegemony's primary trade corridor. "Beth, are you set?" Sam's voice came through the communication network connecting all 3 planet ships. "Liberty Prime is operational," Beth responded. "All weapon arrays are active. All personnel are at combat positions." The 3rd vessel, Iron Bastion, was commanded by Admiral Kate Johnson. She had placed her ship near the Void Collective's territory, where their dark vessels concealed themselves in the emptiness between stars. "Iron Bastion is positioned," Kate announced. "Awaiting your command, Sam." Sam checked his timepiece. In exactly 60 seconds, every major power in the galaxy would receive identical communications. Dr. Kevin Hall had invested weeks composing it, ensuring every phrase was flawless. "This is the moment," Sam told his team. Tony broadcast the message on all channels. "Make certain every vessel, every station, every planet receives it." Tony's hands moved across his controls. Throughout the galaxy, communication networks suddenly activated with an emergency transmission. The message was straightforward, but it would shake galactic civilization's foundations. To all empires and governments across the galaxy, the message started. "This is General Sam Parker representing the human race. For far too long, you've treated us as lesser beings. You've stolen our resources, our work, and our independence. You've schemed to make us your slaves. This stops today." On the Zephyrian home planet, the High Command was assembled in their crystal fortress. The bird-like aliens paused their meeting when the human message interrupted their systems. "Today we unveil what humanity has been constructing in secret," the message went on. "We have built 3 vessels that will establish the foundation of a new galactic system. You have 72 hours to start dismantling your empires and releasing all enslaved species. If you resist, we will show why you should never have underestimated humanity." The Zephyrian High Commander, a tall creature with golden plumage, chuckled at the message. "Humans making threats against us? This must be some prank." But his amusement vanished when his sensors picked up something impossible. 3 enormous objects were traveling through space, each one bigger than any ship ever constructed. The largest was heading straight toward Zephyrian space. "What are these things?" the High Commander demanded. His science officer, a nervous creature with blue feathers, examined the data. Sir, they seem to be manufactured objects, but the size measurements must be incorrect. Nothing that massive could travel through space. On New Terra, Sam was observing the same information on his displays. The alien fleets were panicking, attempting to understand what they were detecting. Some were moving to block the human ships. Others were transmitting messages demanding explanations. "Sir, we're getting a reply from the Zephyrian High Command," Tony announced. "They're insisting that we halt our ships and surrender for interrogation." Sam chuckled. "Send them our answer." The answer wasn't words. It was a power demonstration that would be recalled for millennia. Sam signaled to Dr. Hall, who was controlling the weapon arrays. "Fire one warning blast," Sam commanded. "Make it memorable." Dr. Hall had been anticipating this moment his whole career. He selected a small moon in an empty system far from any inhabited planets. The main cannon of New Terra charged with energy that made the whole ship tremble. The beam that shot from New Terra was visible across multiple star systems. It struck the moon with the strength of 100 nuclear explosions. The moon simply stopped existing, turned to powder, and scattered across space. Throughout the galaxy, every sensor network picked up the energy reading. Every military leader saw the data and grasped what it meant. The humans had constructed a weapon that could destroy planets. "Transmit the readings to all major powers," Sam commanded. "Make certain they comprehend what they just observed." The reaction was instant. The crystalline hegemony transmitted a message requesting talks. The Void Collective pulled their ships to defensive arrangements. The Zephyrian High Command fell silent, probably attempting to determine how to react. But not everyone was willing to surrender. The Zephyrian war fleets were already advancing to intercept New Terra. 12 battle cruisers, each spanning 5 kilometers long, were approaching at top speed. "Sir, we have approaching vessels," reported Lieutenant Amy Foster from the tactical station. 12 Zephyrian cruisers approaching from various directions. Sam studied the tactical readout. The Zephyrian ships were quick and heavily armed by galactic measures. Their commanders likely thought they could overwhelm the human ship with numbers. "Let them approach," Sam said quietly. "Time for the second demonstration." The Zephyrian fleet attacked first. Energy beams and missile waves struck New Terra's shields. The impacts illuminated the ship's defensive barriers like fireworks, but they didn't even slow the massive vessel down. "Their weapons aren't penetrating," Amy announced. "Our shields are maintaining at 98%, Sam acknowledged. The shields had been engineered to resist the combined firepower of whole fleets. 12 ships were barely noticeable. "Return fire," Sam commanded. "Disable their vessels. We want captives, not casualties." Dr. Hall modified his targeting systems. Rather than using the primary cannons, he chose smaller weapons designed for accurate strikes. Energy beams reached from New Terra and struck each Zephyrian ship in precisely the correct locations to cripple their engines without destroying them. Within moments, the whole Zephyrian fleet was floating helplessly in space. Their crews were unharmed, but their ships were immobilized. "Dispatch rescue ships to retrieve the survivors," Sam instructed, "and transmit another message to the Zephyrian High Command. Inform them this is their last warning." The message was brief. "Your strongest fleet has been defeated effortlessly. You have 60 hours left to meet our demands. Choose carefully." Throughout the galaxy, the other empires monitored the battle through their sensor systems. They observed 12 of the Zephyrian Empire's finest ships disabled in moments. They witnessed a human weapon that could obliterate moons with one shot. For the first time in thousands of years, the Galactic Empires were frightened, and humanity was just beginning. Admiral Kate Johnson watched the countdown clock on her display. 72 hours had elapsed since humanity's ultimatum, and the empires had provided their response. The Zephyrian Dominion had announced war. The crystalline hegemony had refused to liberate their slaves. The Void Collective had simply gone quiet, which everyone recognized meant they were preparing for combat. "All stations confirm ready," Major Rick Davis declared from his position at the tactical station. "Iron Bastion is prepared for battle," Kate acknowledged. She had wished the empires would select peace, but she had anticipated they wouldn't. Empires that had ruled for millennia didn't surrender readily. They would need to be shown the genuine price of their stubbornness. "Signal New Terra and Liberty Prime," Kate commanded. "Operation Freedom starts now." Across the galaxy, the 3 planet-sized warships initiated their synchronized assault. Each ship had been given specific objectives based on years of intelligence collection. Maya Rodriguez had performed her role excellently, providing detailed information about every major military facility in the galaxy. General Sam Parker took New Terra straight toward the Zephyrian capital system. The golden-feathered aliens had constructed their greatest fortress on a planet called Zephyr Prime. The world was encircled by defensive stations, each one armed with weapons that could destroy regular starships. "Sir, we're picking up over 200 defense platforms," Commander Amy Foster announced. "They're all locking onto us." Sam grinned. "Let them attack first. I want them to realize how ineffective their weapons are." The Zephyrian defense platforms fired together. Thousands of energy beams hit New Terra's shields, generating a light display that was visible from the planet's surface. But when the bombardment concluded, New Terra advanced without even slowing down. "Our shields absorbed the energy," Amy announced. "We're actually more powerful now than when we began." That was Dr. Kevin Hall's greatest creation. The shields didn't simply block enemy attacks. They absorbed them and transformed them into energy for the ship systems. The more enemies attacked them, the stronger the human ships became. "Return fire," Sam commanded. "One shot." Center of the planet. New Terra's main cannon charged with enough energy to fracture a continent. The beam struck Zephyr Prime's surface and penetrated deep into the planet's core. The world shook as if a giant had struck it, but the shot had been precisely calculated. Rather than destroying the planet, it had destroyed only the military command center buried miles underground. The civilian inhabitants were safe, but the Zephyrian military leadership was eliminated. "Transmit the message," Sam commanded. The message was broadcast throughout the entire Zephyrian Empire. "Your leaders who plan to enslave humanity are gone. Your military command is destroyed. Any ship that continues fighting will be destroyed. Surrender immediately, and you will be treated justly." Meanwhile, Colonel Beth Williams was confronting the crystalline hegemony. The crystal-based aliens had constructed their ships from the same substance as their bodies, creating vessels that were stunning but supposedly indestructible. "Beth, are you prepared?" Sam's voice came through the communication network. "Liberty Prime is positioned," Beth responded. "The Crystal Fleet is approaching. 50 ships, all their newest models." The crystalline ships were artistic masterpieces, each one carved from a single massive crystal and polished to perfection. They traveled through space like living gemstones, their surfaces reflecting the light of nearby stars. "They're gorgeous," Lieutenant Luke Thompson said from the pilot station. "Almost ashamed to destroy them?" "We are not destroying them," Beth corrected. "We're freeing them." Dr. Hall had analyzed the crystalline ships for years. He had found that their crystal composition, while strong, had a specific resonance frequency. If you struck them with exactly the correct sound wave, they would shatter like glass. "Fire the sonic disruptors," Beth commanded. Liberty Prime's weapons weren't energy beams or missiles. They were sound waves transmitted through space using technology that the crystal aliens had never encountered before. The waves hit the crystalline fleet and created vibrations in their crystal hulls. One by one, the beautiful ships started to crack. Their crystal hulls split along perfect lines, and the ships broke apart like puzzles separating. The crews inside were protected by emergency force fields, but their ships were now worthless. "Message to the crystalline hegemony," Beth declared. "Your ships are defeated. Your people are unharmed. Release your slaves, and we will assist you in rebuilding." The third battle was the most unusual of all. Admiral Kate Johnson took Iron Bastion into the vacant space between stars where the Void Collective concealed their black ships. The aliens of the Void Collective were creatures of living shadow, and their ships were invisible to most sensors. "I can't detect them," Major Davis announced. "But I know they're present." Kate had anticipated this. The Void Collective's primary weapon was their ability to hide, but humans had invested years developing methods to locate invisible enemies. "Activate the quantum scanners," Kate instructed. The scanner transmitted waves of energy that could detect even the tiniest disturbances in space. Within seconds, they revealed the location of over 100 Void Collective ships, all arranged in a sphere around Iron Bastion. "They're attempting to encircle us," Davis noted. "Let them," Kate said. "Fire the gravity bombs." The gravity bombs were Dr. Hall's most inventive creation. Rather than exploding with fire or energy, they generated tiny black holes that existed for only a few seconds. But those few seconds were sufficient to capture every Void Collective ship and pull them into normal space where they became visible. The dark aliens found themselves revealed for the first time in centuries. Their ships, designed for stealth, were defenseless in direct combat. Kate instructed her team to cripple their engines without destroying them. "Message to the Void Collective," Kate declared. "Your secrets are no longer hidden. Your ships are captured. Join the new Galactic Order or face the results." Within 6 hours, 3 empires that had controlled the galaxy for millennia were completely defeated. The Zephyrian military was eliminated. The crystalline fleet was shattered. The Void Collective was revealed and powerless, but the humans weren't finished. Major Davis organized the liberation of slave planets throughout the galaxy. Transport ships launched from all 3 planet-sized warships, carrying human soldiers to every world where beings were held in chains. The liberation was quick and organized. The Empire fleets that might have protected the slave worlds were already defeated. Local forces surrendered rather than face human planet destroyers. On planet after planet, the same scene occurred. Human soldiers arrived not as conquerors, but as liberators. They shattered the chains of slavery and declared that the era of empires was finished. "Message to the galaxy," Sam declared from New Terra. "Any species that chooses to remain free will be defended. Any species that attempts to enslave others will be halted. This is the new rule of the galaxy." The reaction was immediate. Hundreds of minor species that had been enslaved for generations transmitted messages of gratitude. Some cried with happiness. Others couldn't accept they were finally free. But there were also messages of fury from other empires that had not yet been confronted. They demanded to know who had authorized humans to alter the galaxy. Sam's response was straightforward. "We authorized ourselves, and we have the strength to implement it." The galactic empires had collapsed in less than a week. The age of human authority had started. President Helen Carter stood in the conference room aboard New Terra, examining the holographic display that showed the whole galaxy. 3 months had elapsed since the empires collapsed, and the galaxy was a vastly different place. Some worlds were flourishing in their new independence. Others were struggling with challenges that nobody had anticipated. "The Zephyrian refugees are creating problems on Kepler Station," Ambassador Joe Brooks announced. "They're insisting on special privileges because they used to be rulers." Helen sighed. This was the most difficult aspect of the responsibility. It was simple to destroy empires, but much more challenging to help people learn to coexist peacefully. The former rulers didn't want to surrender their advantages, and some of the former slaves wanted payback. "What about the crystalline worlds?" Helen questioned. "Better information there," Joe responded. "They're adjusting well to self-rule. Their natural collective thinking is helping them make choices together." Captain Nina Walsh entered the room holding a data device. She had been traveling between liberated worlds, assisting to establish new governments and maintain peace. "Ma'am, we have a problem on Orion 7, Nina announced. "The former slaves there don't trust one another. 3 different species are battling over who gets to govern the planet." Helen rubbed her forehead. This was occurring on many worlds. Species that had been enslaved together were now fighting each other for dominance. Independence, it turned out, was more complex than anyone had thought. "Send peacekeepers," Helen instructed, "but make certain they understand they're not there to take control. They're there to help people communicate with each other." Dr. Paul Martin had been tackling this challenge for weeks. He had established medical stations and schools on the liberated worlds, but he kept encountering the same problem. People who had been slaves for generations didn't know how to make choices for themselves. "We need to be patient," Paul said over the communication network from his location on Liberty Prime. "These people have been controlled for hundreds of years. Learning to think independently will require time," Helen acknowledged, but she was concerned. Some of the liberated worlds were succeeding, but others were falling into chaos. There were accounts of crime, violence, and disorder. Some people were even requesting their old rulers to return. "Ma'am, we're getting a message from the Confederation of Free Worlds," Joe declared. "They want to meet with you." The Confederation was a group of species that had managed to remain independent during the Empire years. They had been doubtful of humanity's actions, questioning if humans were just another empire in disguise. "Connect them," Helen said. The hologram displayed a tall, thin alien with green skin and large eyes. This was Ambassador Kellen of the Voran Republic representing the Confederation. "President Carter," Kellen said formally, "we have been observing your actions with considerable interest. We must question what are your genuine intentions." Helen had expected this inquiry. "Our intention is to ensure no species is enslaved by another. We want every world to be independent, to select its own direction. But you patrol our space with your planet ships," Kellen noted. "You have weapons that can destroy worlds. How do we know you won't employ them against us?" It was a reasonable question. Helen looked at the display showing the 3 planet ships traveling through space. Iron Bastion was near the former Void Collective territory, assisting to relocate refugees. Liberty Prime was helping with reconstruction efforts in Crystal Space. New Terra was monitoring the trade routes, ensuring nobody attempted to restart the slave trade. "You don't know," Helen confessed. "You have to trust us, just like we have to trust you not to restart the empires when we're not watching." Kellen was silent for a moment. "Your people have demonstrated restraint so far, but power corrupts, as we have discovered from the fallen empires. What happens when you become what you battled against?" Helen had been questioning herself the same thing. It would be simple to use the planet ships to pressure other species to do what humans desired. It would be simple to establish a human empire and control the galaxy. "We've considered that," Helen said. "That's why we're suggesting the Galactic Accords." She activated another display showing a document that human diplomats had been developing for months. The Galactic Accords were a set of guidelines that would regulate how species interacted with each other. "No species may enslave another," Helen read. "No species may conquer another's planets. All species have the right to self-determination, and no species, including humanity, may employ weapons of mass destruction against civilian populations." Kellen examined the document carefully. "This includes limitations on your own weapons?" "Yes," Helen verified. "We're suggesting to restrict our own power. The planet ships will only be employed for peacekeeping and defense. If we violate these guidelines, the other species have the right to combine against us." It was a daring proposal. Helen was requesting humanity to surrender some of their power in exchange for lasting peace. Not everyone on the human worlds agreed with this choice. "Ma'am, we're receiving complaints from the Human Defense League," Joe reported quietly. "They claim you're surrendering humanity's advantages." Helen had expected this too. Some humans wanted to employ their new power to construct a human empire. They didn't comprehend that empires always collapsed eventually, and when they did, they usually destroyed their creators with them. "The Human Defense League can complain all they want," Helen said. "We're not constructing an empire. We're constructing something superior." Captain Nina Walsh had returned from another mission to the Outer Worlds. She looked exhausted but optimistic. "The Andromedan refugees are settling in successfully on New Haven," she announced. "They're collaborating with the local species to construct a shared government. It's actually functioning." That was the positive information. Some worlds were discovering how to coexist. Different species were sharing their knowledge and resources. Trade was beginning to flow again, but this time it was fair trade between equals. "What about the former Empire worlds?" Helen questioned. "Mixed outcomes," Nina admitted. "Some of the Zephyrian colonies are adjusting well. Others are still attempting to determine how to govern themselves. The crystal worlds are performing better because they're accustomed to making group choices." Dr. Paul Martin's voice came through the communication network. "Helen, you need to view this. I'm transmitting you a report from the Tau Ceti system." Helen read the report on her data device. The Tau Ceti system had been one of the worst slave worlds, with 5 different species forced to labor in horrible conditions. Now, 3 months later, they had formed a council with representatives from all 5 species. "They're constructing a new city," the report said. "Each species is contributing their finest skills. The Zephyrians are supplying aerial transportation. The Crystal people are creating beautiful structures. The humans are managing the technical systems. It's unlike anything we've witnessed before." Helen smiled. This was what she had wished for. Different species collaborating together, each one contributing their strengths. "Ma'am, Ambassador Kellen is still waiting for your reply," Joe reminded her. Helen looked at the Voran diplomat. "Ambassador, we're not perfect. We're going to make errors, but we're attempting to accomplish something that's never been done before. We're attempting to construct a galaxy where everyone is free." Kellen nodded slowly. "The Confederation will evaluate your proposal, but we will be monitoring. If humanity becomes what the empires were, we will combine against you. I hope you will, Helen responded. That's exactly what should occur if we lose our direction. The meeting concluded, and Helen was left alone with her thoughts. Constructing a free galaxy was more difficult than destroying empires, but it was also more significant. The future of every species in the galaxy relied on succeeding. Fleet Admiral Chris Taylor stood on the observation deck of New Terra, watching the stars through the enormous windows. 5 years had elapsed since the empires collapsed, and the galaxy was finally at peace. Below him, the city inside the planet ship was buzzing with activity. Humans, Zephyrians, crystal beings, and many other species worked together in the streets and gardens. Sir, the exploration fleet is prepared to depart, Commander Lisa Stone announced. She was young, part of the new generation that had grown up after the conflict. To her, seeing different species collaborating together was ordinary. Chris acknowledged. The exploration fleet was humanity's next great venture. 300 ships, including the newest planet ship called Horizon, were preparing to exit the galaxy and explore the emptiness between star systems. Are the volunteers prepared? Chris questioned. Yes, sir. We have representatives from 47 different species. Everyone wants to be part of the next adventure. That was the genuine victory, Chris thought. Not the military conquest, but the fact that different species now selected to collaborate together. The galaxy had become a place where cooperation was more powerful than conflict. Dr. Sarah Murphy entered the observation deck carrying a data device. She had invested the last 5 years analyzing the cultures of the liberated species, assisting them to preserve their traditions while learning to coexist together. Chris, you need to view the latest reports from the Outer Rim, Sarah said. The results are superior to what we anticipated. Chris read the report. The former slave worlds were now flourishing. Trade between species had increased by over 300%. Crime had dropped to the lowest levels in documented history. Most significantly, no species had attempted to conquer another in over 2 years. The Galactic Accords are functioning, Sarah continued. Even the species that were hesitant to sign are now following the guidelines. The Galactic Accords had been signed by over 200 species. They had generated a new form of government where no single species could dominate others. Conflicts were resolved by councils with representatives from multiple planets. The planet. Ships served as neutral peacekeepers, prepared to intervene if anyone attempted to restart the old methods. Sir, we're picking up a priority message from the deep space monitoring stations, Lisa announced. You need to hear this. Chris activated the communication network. The message came from Captain Dan Robinson, who was commanding the exploration mission beyond the galaxy's edge. Admiral Taylor, we've found something significant. Dan's voice crackled through the speakers. We're not alone out here. There's something enormous approaching our galaxy. Chris felt his blood freeze. What kind of something? Ships, sir, but not like anything we've encountered before. They're massive, and there are thousands of them. Maybe millions. They're still several years distant, but they're definitely heading toward us. Sarah examined the star charts. An invasion fleet from another galaxy. That's what it appears like, Dan continued. The energy signatures are completely unfamiliar. These beings have technology that makes our planet ships look like toys. Chris activated the emergency communication network that connected all the major worlds in the galaxy. Within moments, leaders from hundreds of species were listening to the report. Citizens of the galaxy, Chris declared. We confront a new challenge. An unknown force is approaching from beyond our galaxy. We don't know their plans, but we must be prepared. The reaction was instant. Rather than panic, there was determination. The Zephyrian High Council offered their quickest ships for reconnaissance missions. The Crystal Collective volunteered their defensive knowledge. The reformed Void beings offered their stealth technology. Admiral, came a voice from the Confederation of Free Worlds. Our species commit our complete support. We will stand together against this danger. That was the moment Chris understood humanity's genuine victory. They hadn't simply defeated the empires. They had generated something the galaxy had never witnessed before, a civilization where different species selected to assist each other. "Lisa, initiate preparations for the defense initiative," Chris instructed. "We have work to accomplish," Commander Stone acknowledged. She had been trained for this moment, though she had wished it would never arrive. "Sir, should we initiate construction of new planet ships?" "Yes, but not just human ships. We're going to construct them together. Every species will contribute their finest technology and knowledge. Over the following months, the galaxy transformed again. But this time, it wasn't because of conquest or liberation. It was because of cooperation. Shipyards emerged around every major planet, constructing vessels that combined the finest ideas from many species. Dr. Murphy organized the cultural exchange programs. Scientists from different worlds collaborated together to solve technical challenges. Artists from various species generated new forms of beauty that no single culture could have imagined. "The new ships are remarkable," Lisa announced during one of their planning meetings. "The Zephyrian flight systems, crystal defensive matrices, and human weapons technology function perfectly together." Chris smiled. "What about the crews? Mixed species on every ship. The cooperation is incredible. They're not just collaborating together, they're becoming companions." The unknown fleet was still 2 years distant, but the galaxy was prepared. The combined fleet that was being constructed would be bigger and more powerful than anything in known history. More significantly, it would be crewed by beings who had selected to battle together. "Sir, Captain Robinson is requesting authorization to attempt communication with the approaching fleet," Lisa announced. Chris considered the request. It was dangerous, but it was also the correct thing to accomplish. Maybe the approaching beings weren't hostile. Maybe they were just explorers like humanity had become. Authorization granted, but advise him to be cautious. Months elapsed. The combined fleet grew bigger every day. Ship designs that had seemed impossible were now being constructed in massive construction yards. The planet ships had become mobile cities where different species lived and collaborated together. Then came the message that transformed everything. "Admiral Taylor, this is Captain Robinson. We've made communication with the approaching fleet. They're not invaders. They're refugees." Chris felt relief wash over him. Refugees from what? "Something destroyed their home galaxy, sir. They've been traveling through space for thousands of years, searching for a new home. They're requesting permission to settle in our galaxy." The galaxy's reaction was quick and unanimous. The Galactic Council voted to welcome the refugees. Empty planets were prepared for settlement. The planet ships were transformed from warships to transport vessels. "This is what we've become, Chris," said to Sarah as they observed the first refugee ships arrive. "We've become a civilization that welcomed strangers rather than conquering them," Sarah acknowledged. Humanity's greatest victory wasn't defeating the empires. It was teaching the galaxy how to collaborate together. Commander Stone approached them with a new report. "Sir, the refugees are sharing their technology with us. They have knowledge about travel between galaxies. They're offering to assist us explore beyond our local group." Chris looked out at the stars, recognizing that humanity's greatest adventures were still ahead. They had constructed planet-sized warships to liberate the galaxy. Now they were constructing something even greater, a civilization where anyone could find a home among the stars. "Prepare the exploration fleets," Chris instructed. "It's time to discover what else is out there." The galaxy had learned humanity's greatest lesson. That genuine strength came not from the ability to destroy, but from the willingness to protect and welcome others. The age of empires was genuinely finished. The age of cooperation had started, and in the vast darkness between galaxies, new adventures were waiting.